I was hired as a videographer for Ellen DeGeneres' private charity gala in Beverly Hills, 2019. 300 of Hollywood's elite gathered to give back to the community. But during the closed-door auction, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Ellen's eyes went completely black while she was speaking. Guests started acting strange, zombie-like. The event planner grabbed me and whispered, "Kid, whatever you think you're filming, delete it now." But I couldn't delete what I witnessed, because this wasn't about charity. It was an ancient entity feeding off the most powerful people in Hollywood. This is what really happened behind those mansion doors. You ever get a gig that feels too good to be true? That's exactly what happened when I got hired to film Ellen DeGeneres' annual charity gala in Beverly Hills. It was September 2019. I'd been doing wedding videos and corporate events for 3 years, barely scraping by in LA's brutal freelance market. Then my agent calls with this opportunity. High-end charity event, A-list celebrities, excellent pay, but you need to sign an NDA thicker than a phone book. The location was a private estate in the hills, one of those old Hollywood mansions that's seen everything. The kind of place where deals are made and secrets are buried. When I arrived for the setup meeting, the scale of it hit me. This wasn't just a charity dinner. This was power gathering in its purest form. Ellen was there, of course, overseeing every detail. She looked exactly like you'd expect. Blonde bob, designer casual wear, that famous smile. But something felt different about her in person, more intense, like she was studying everyone around her, cataloging information for later use. "You must be our videographer," she said, approaching me with that trademark warmth. "I'm so glad you're here. Tonight is going to be very special." The way she said "special" made my skin crawl, but I shrugged it off. Rich people talk differently, right? The mansion was transformed into something that looked like a fairy tale and a nightmare had a baby. Elegant, sure, but there was something unsettling about the decorations. The flowers were beautiful but seemed to wilt when you looked at them directly. The mirrors throughout the house showed reflections that were just slightly off, like they were on a tiny delay. I was setting up my equipment when I met Sarah, the event planner. She'd been working Hollywood events for 15 years, had seen everything. But that night, she looked nervous. "First time filming one of Ellen's private events?" she asked, helping me position a camera near the main dining area. "Yeah, seems like a pretty standard charity gala to me." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "Just keep your cameras rolling, but don't look too closely at the footage until you get home. And whatever you do, don't film the private auction. That's off limits." "Why?" "Because some things aren't meant to be recorded." She walked away before I could ask more questions. By 7 p.m., the mansion was filled with Hollywood royalty. I recognized faces from movies, TV shows, music, people whose net worth exceeded most countries' GDP. They mingled with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, looking exactly like you'd expect at a high-end charity event. But as the night went on, I started noticing patterns through my camera lens. The guests moved in small, tight circles. They didn't really seem to be enjoying themselves, more like they were going through the motions of having a good time. Their conversations looked animated, but when I got close enough to hear, they weren't talking about anything, just making sounds that resembled conversation. And Ellen was everywhere and nowhere. I'd catch her in my peripheral vision, moving through the crowd like a shark through water. But when I'd turn my camera toward her, she'd vanished, like she could sense when she was being filmed. The formal dinner started at 8:30. 300 guests seated at perfectly arranged tables, each place setting probably worth more than my rent. Ellen gave the opening speech about the importance of giving back, helping those less fortunate, using privilege for good. Standard stuff. But something was wrong with her delivery. Ellen's usually animated, expressive. That night, she stood perfectly still at the podium, hands at her sides, speaking in a monotone that somehow carried to every corner of the massive dining room without amplification. Her voice had this hypnotic quality, like she was speaking directly into your brain instead of through your ears. And the audience was transfixed. 300 successful, powerful people sitting in perfect silence, staring at Ellen like she was the most fascinating thing they'd ever seen. Nobody blinked. Nobody moved. They just watched. I was filming from the back of the room when I noticed it. Ellen's eyes had gone completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, like looking into deep space, but she kept talking, kept smiling, kept delivering her speech about charity and kindness. That's when I saw the shadows. They started as subtle movements in my peripheral vision. Dark shapes that seemed to flow rather than walk, circling the dining tables like predators. At first, I thought it was a trick of the lighting. These old mansions have weird shadows. But as Ellen's speech continued, the shadows got bolder, more solid. I could see them through my camera lens moving between the guests, touching shoulders, whispering in ears. And wherever they touched, the guests got paler. More still. Ellen's voice grew stronger, more commanding. She wasn't just talking about charity anymore. She was talking about sacrifice, about the necessity of giving up pieces of yourself for the greater good, about how true power comes from knowing when to take and when to be taken from. The shadows were feeding, drawing something out of the guests, their energy, their life force, their very essence, and channeling it toward Ellen. She was glowing now, literally radiating light while everyone around her grew dimmer. That's when Sarah appeared at my side. "Turn off the cameras," she whispered urgently. "What's happening?" "Turn them off. Now." But I kept filming. I had to. This was the story of a lifetime. After dinner, Ellen announced the evening's main event, a private auction for exclusive experiences. The guests were led to a smaller room, an elegant library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fireplace that cast dancing shadows on the walls. I followed with my handheld camera, despite Sarah's increasingly frantic signals to stop. The items being auctioned weren't normal charity auction fare. No weekend getaways or dinner with celebrities. These were different. First item, Ellen announced, that hypnotic quality still in her voice, a private consultation with my personal energy advisor. Starting bid, your deepest fear. The guests didn't raise hands or paddles. They just stood up when they wanted to bid, and instead of money, they were offering intangible things, memories, emotions, years off their life. "I'll trade my capacity for genuine happiness," said a famous director whose name you'd recognize. "My ability to form lasting relationships," countered a A-list actress. "The last good memory I have of my father," bid a music mogul. Ellen accepted these bids with serene satisfaction, like she was collecting rare coins. And with each accepted offer, the winning bidder looked more hollow, more empty. That's when I realized what was really happening. This wasn't a charity gala, it was a harvest. I was so focused on filming that I didn't notice Ellen approaching until she was right behind me. "Fascinating work, isn't it?" she said, her voice now carrying multiple tones like several people speaking in harmony. I spun around. Up close, her eyes were still that impossible black, but now I could see things moving inside them, like looking into a starless night sky full of hungry shadows. "What is this?" I whispered. "Evolution," she replied. "These people have more power, more influence, more resources than most humans could dream of, but they're still mortal, still limited. I'm offering them something better." "You're stealing from them." Ellen laughed, a sound like breaking glass wrapped in silk. "I'm liberating them. From the burden of emotions they don't need, from memories that only cause pain, from the exhausting work of being fully human. And what do you get out of it? Everything they're willing to give up. Fear, joy, love, hate, it's all just energy, and energy can be redirected." She gestured toward the auction, where another bidder was offering up the ability to feel physical pain. "They need those things. They're human. For now." Ellen's smile widened impossibly. "But humanity is just a starting point, a rough draft. I'm helping them become something more refined." "You have a choice," Ellen said, moving closer. The temperature around us dropped 10 degrees. "You can join them. Give me something you don't really need, maybe your creativity or your capacity for doubt, and become part of something larger, something that will outlast your brief little human life. What if I say no? Then you leave. Tonight, delete everything you filmed. Never speak about what you've seen, and spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have become if you'd been brave enough to evolve." I looked around the auction room. The guests who'd successfully bid were standing perfectly still, smiling those same empty smiles. They looked peaceful, content, free from the messy complications of being human. For a moment, I was tempted. Life was hard, full of rejection, disappointment, anxiety. What if I could just let go of all that? But then I remembered Sarah's warning. I remembered the way Ellen's voice had bypassed my conscious mind and tried to speak directly to my subconscious. I remembered the shadows feeding on the guests during dinner. This wasn't evolution, it was consumption. "I'll leave," I said. Ellen nodded like she'd expected that answer. "Smart choice. But remember, what you think you know about tonight, it's bigger than just one event. There are others. Actors, musicians, politicians, people in power who've made the same choice my friends have made tonight." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you'll never be able to prove it. The cameras will show nothing but a normal charity dinner. The guests will remember nothing but a pleasant evening supporting a good cause. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing the truth, but being unable to share it." She was right. When I got home and reviewed my footage, it showed exactly what she'd predicted. A standard high-end charity event. Ellen giving speeches about kindness, guests enjoying dinner and participating in a normal auction for luxury items and experiences. No black eyes, no shadow figures, no harvesting of human essence. But I remember what I saw. I remember what I felt. And I remember the faces of those guests as they traded away pieces of their humanity for the promise of something more. I never worked another high-end Hollywood event. Word gets around in this industry when you're not reliable, when you ask too many questions or seem too interested in things that should remain private. But I kept watching the guests from that night, kept tracking their careers, their public appearances, their interviews. They were all more successful than ever, more focused, more efficient, but also more hollow, like they were wearing masks of their former selves, going through the motions of being human without actually feeling anything. The director made 3 more films, each technically perfect but emotionally vacant. The actress won 2 more awards for performances that looked flawless but felt manufactured. The music mogul signed the biggest artists in the world, but his events had no soul. They'd gotten what they paid for, success without the burden of human limitation. And Ellen? She continued her show for 3 more years, spreading her message of kindness and positivity to millions of viewers. But I knew what was really behind that smile, what was really feeding on all that adoration and love. Ellen's show ended in 2022, but she's not gone. She's just dormant, waiting for the next opportunity to gather the powerful and influential in one place, waiting for the next harvest. And she's not alone. The entertainment industry, the political world, the business elite, they're full of people who've made similar trades, who've given up their humanity in exchange for power, influence, success. They look like us. They talk like us. But they're not us anymore. They're something else wearing human faces, using human institutions to feed on human energy. So the next time you see a celebrity who seems too perfect, too polished, too removed from normal human emotion, ask yourself, what did they trade away to get where they are? And, more importantly, are you willing to pay the same price? If you could trade away your deepest fear, your capacity for sadness, or your ability to feel genuine pain in exchange for guaranteed success and power, would you do it? What parts of your humanity are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? Think about it the next time you're watching someone who seems to have it all. Ask yourself what they might have given up to get there. And remember, some prices are too high, no matter what they're offering in return.